I immediately started thinking, okay, so I'm the guy that's going to lose my leg in a year. Saw the place where they did the lap band surgery, and I just pulled in and within 3 days had the surgery. The story kind of goes from there. I think I lost 50 pounds within, I want to say 6 weeks of getting it.
One tragedy changed everything for Corey Harrison, and it was only the beginning. For years, Corey Harrison seemed to have the life most people dream about. As one of the stars of Pawn Stars, he had fame, success, and a family legacy that looked untouchable from the outside. But behind the scenes, a series of devastating events was about to send his life in a direction nobody saw coming. How did one of reality television's biggest stars lose control of everything he had worked for? And what really happened after the cameras stopped showing the full story? Join us as we uncover the heartbreaking tragedy of Corey Harrison and the shocking events that changed his life forever. The golden life before the darkness. Corey Harrison entered the family business almost from birth, working at the gold and silver pawn shop when he was just 9 years old. The shop had been opened by his grandfather, Richard the Old Man Harrison, and was being run by his father, Rick Harrison. By the time Pawn Stars premiered in 2009 on the History Channel, Corey was already a very important part of the operation, managing the shop, overseeing employees, and handling the daily restoration and sales work that kept the business functioning. For over a decade, Corey was the steady presence on the show. While his father Rick was the colorful face of Pawn Stars, known for his larger-than-life personality and willingness to make controversial deals, Corey represented the backbone of the operation. He was professional, knowledgeable, and the one who had to deal with the practical consequences of his father's decisions. The show made the Harrison family celebrities. Rick became a nationally recognized figure. Corey became famous as Big Hoss, the devoted son who had dedicated his life to the family business. The show ran for 23 seasons, earning enormous viewership and turning the gold and silver pawn shop into a tourist attraction that people visited specifically to see the location where the show was filmed. Corey's love life was also interesting. He was married twice, first to his high school sweetheart Charlene, whom he divorced in 2015, and then to Karina Kiki Harrison, whom he married in 2017 before they split in 2018. They shared a son born in October 2018. By all external measures, Corey Harrison had succeeded in building a stable, successful life within the family empire. But behind the scenes, trouble was brewing in ways that money and television fame could not solve. In a family business spanning multiple generations, with family members working closely together in the same shop and appearing together on television, the pressures and tensions were building in directions that no one expected. The people viewers saw on television were only part of the story, and the pressures inside the Harrison family were not evenly shared. Some carried fame, others carried silence. And in that silence, something was quietly breaking. But how long could it hold before it finally came to the surface? The family crisis nobody saw coming. Corey's younger brother Adam was not a public figure. Unlike Corey, who appeared on the show and became famous alongside his father, Adam Harrison worked at the shop without appearing on camera, remaining largely out of the public eye despite being part of the family business. But in his 20s and 30s, Adam was struggling with something far more serious than the everyday challenges of working in the family business. Adam had developed a serious drug addiction problem. According to his father Rick, the addiction issues began when Adam was in his 20s. Rick tried everything he could think of to help his son. He sent Adam to rehab multiple times, believing each time that treatment would finally stick and that his son would get better. And in those moments right after rehab, it seemed to work. Adam would come out doing great, seemingly ready to put his addiction behind him. But then, invariably, he would relapse. The pattern repeated itself over and over. Rehab, recovery, hope, relapse, despair. For a successful businessman like Rick Harrison, someone used to being in control, making deals, solving problems through force of will, having a son struggling with addiction was a humbling and frustrating experience. In January 2024, Adam died in Las Vegas at age 39. The official cause was ruled an accidental overdose of fentanyl and methamphetamine. According to reports, Adam had been incarcerated for months before the overdose and was living in a guest house in the Las Vegas area when he died. The toxicology results suggested that Adam had been expecting heroin, but had instead received fentanyl, the contamination that has become a plague across America's drug supply, turning what would have been a survivable dose of heroin into a lethal overdose. Rick Harrison released a statement confirming the fentanyl overdose and using the platform of his fame to advocate for border security and more serious attention to the fentanyl crisis. Corey, on Instagram, posted a throwback photo with his brother, writing simply, "Wax WTFI will always love you, Bubba." The pain was private, but the loss was absolute. A family that had built its public image on success and control had been devastated by something they could not control. And Corey, who had spent his entire life in his father's shadow on the show, now had to process grief in a new way. Grief not just for his brother, but for the family structure that had defined his entire existence. But just as the family was beginning to process the loss of Adam, Corey would face his own brush with death, one that would force him to confront the deepest trauma his brother's death had created. So what exactly happened? And what happened in the aftermath? The motorcycle crash that changed everything. By 2025, Corey Harrison had made a significant life decision. He announced that he would not be renewing his contract with Pawn Stars, ending his 23-season run on the show. In an interview with the Las Vegas Review-Journal, he explained his reasoning bluntly. "At this stage of the game, we're all playing a character on Pawn Stars. I can't play another season of 41-year-old me pretending to be 23. His departure represented a significant moment. For decades, the Harrison family had been the face of the show. His father Rick, his grandfather before him, and Corey himself had built the brand. But Corey had reached a point where continuing felt inauthentic. He knew he needed to move on, to find a different chapter in his life. He relocated to Tulum, Mexico, leaving behind the Las Vegas shop that had been his entire life. Then, in January 2026, exactly 1 year after his brother Adam's death, Corey was involved in a serious motorcycle crash in Tulum, Mexico. The accident was severe. He suffered 11 fractured ribs, a punctured lung, a concussion, internal bleeding, and facial injuries. Corey spent 14 days in the hospital in Mexico before making a decision that would have consequences he couldn't fully anticipate. Facing mounting medical bills in a foreign country, with no health insurance coverage for an international incident, Corey made the painful decision to discharge himself from the hospital against medical advice. The bills were simply too much. He couldn't afford to stay. On January 26, 2026, Corey posted to Instagram showing his facial injuries and X-rays revealing the 11 broken ribs, writing, "Pretty messed up, but I'm good. Crash bars are awesome. 3 nights in the hospital, 11 breaks in my rib cage." He also wrote, "Sorry, Pops, looks like I'm missing your wedding," referring to his father Rick's recent marriage to Agrippina Angie Polushkin. But what followed the discharge was far worse than the initial crash. While resting at his home in Tulum, Corey began experiencing excruciating pain as complications from his injuries developed. His lungs weren't healing properly. The internal damage was more severe than initially diagnosed. He needed to get to a better hospital. but the nearest adequate medical facility was 4.5 hours away in Playa del Carmen. A friend documented the agonizing journey. They transported Corey to the cheaper hospital in Mexico, but even cheaper medical care in a foreign country costs money. In a heartbreaking moment that those with him described, Corey looked at his friend and said, "I'm just going to die out here. I don't have the money to keep paying these people." A man who had made millions appearing on television was now contemplating dying in Mexico because he couldn't afford medical treatment. But perhaps the most tragic aspect of Corey's recovery wasn't the financial crisis or the physical pain. It was the psychological torment created by his brother's death. The ghost of addiction. As Corey began his recovery from the motorcycle crash, he faced a painful dilemma that his brother Adam's death had made deeply personal. Standard treatment for severe rib fractures and internal injuries involves powerful opioid painkillers. These medications are necessary. The pain from 11 broken ribs and a punctured lung is extraordinarily severe. And without pain management, patients struggle to heal because they can't breathe properly or move enough to prevent complications like pneumonia. But Corey was terrified of opioids. The GoFundMe page, created by his friend Aaron Chambers, noted that Corey was reluctant to take heavy painkillers after his brother died of an overdose. Having watched his brother Adam struggle with addiction for years, having watched Adam die from a fentanyl overdose, Corey understood viscerally what opioids could do. He understood that the line between necessary medical treatment and addiction could be thinner than anyone wanted to admit. This created an impossible situation. To heal properly, Corey needed pain management. But pain management, with the most effective medications, opioids, felt like walking toward the same cliff that had killed his brother. So he chose suffering instead. He chose to heal without the medication that could have made his recovery easier, faster, and less dangerous. This decision reflected the deeper psychological impact of Adam's death on Corey. It wasn't just grief at this point. It was trauma and the knowledge that the substance that had killed his brother was the same substance doctors were recommending to him. And it was the terrible irony that in trying to avoid his brother's fate, Corey was subjecting himself to unnecessary suffering. The tragedy wasn't just the accident. It was the way Adam's death had poisoned Corey's relationship with his own medical care. It was the way the opioid crisis that had killed Adam was now preventing Corey from healing optimally. It was a cascading series of tragedies, each one connected to the one before it. As Corey struggled to heal without adequate pain management in a foreign country, the financial crisis that had begun in the hospital was reaching its breaking point. The GoFundMe revelation and the collapse of the empire. By March 2026, Corey Harrison faced medical bills exceeding $100,000, an obviously staggering amount for someone who had just left television and relocated to Mexico. While Corey had earned significant money during his 23 seasons on Pawn Stars, he was no longer earning that money. He was receiving residual checks, but they were not enough to cover the kind of medical expenses that come with a serious international injury. He set up a GoFundMe page, created by his friend Aaron Chambers, asking fans to help him pay for his medical expenses. The decision to ask for public help was humbling and revealing. Here was a man who had been on one of the most successful reality television shows in the world, a man who had worked in a family business generating millions of dollars annually, now asking strangers on the internet to help him pay his medical bills. What made the situation even more ironic was the timing. Rick Harrison, responding to news of the GoFundMe, claimed that he had already paid for Corey's medical bills. This public disagreement between father and son, playing out in the media, revealed tensions that went beyond the simple question of medical expenses. It suggested that Corey and Rick's relationship had fractured in ways that went deeper than the typical family conflict. Corey told TMZ that while he still receives some residual checks from Pawn Stars, he is now completely removed from the show. The series that had defined his entire adult life was over. The income stream that had supported him was drying up, and he was facing enormous medical bills in a foreign country where he had no safety net, no established business, and no clear path forward. The GoFundMe represented more than just a request for money. It represented the visible collapse of what had seemed like an empire. Corey Harrison, who had been groomed since childhood to inherit and expand his family's business, was now a 42-year-old man recovering from near-fatal injuries, financially struggling, emotionally devastated by his brother's death, and estranged from the father who had been his business partner for his entire adult life. The tragedy that had begun with Adam's death 1 year earlier had now engulfed Corey, revealing how fragile even seemingly solid family dynasties can be when facing the pressures of addiction, mortality, and financial reality. From that moment on, the pressures inside the Harrison family stopped being separate issues and started becoming one continuous collapse. When everything is connected like that, what actually holds a family together? The aftermath. As of early 2026, Corey Harrison's life looks radically different from what it was just a few years earlier. He is no longer part of Pawn Stars, having announced he would not renew his contract. He is living in Mexico, recovering from injuries that nearly killed him. He is estranged from his father over the question of who paid his medical bills. He is processing the trauma of his brother's death. And he is asking strangers on the internet for help paying his medical expenses. What happened to Corey Harrison reveals something that doesn't often make it onto reality television. The fragility of family empires when built on personalities and television ratings rather than on deeper foundations of trust and genuine connection. The Gold and Silver Pawn Shop has existed as a business independent of television. It will continue to exist, but the Harrison family's public identity, built so carefully over 23 seasons of Pawn Stars, has fractured under the weight of real-world tragedy. Rick Harrison, Corey's father, has been processing his own grief over Adam's death. In interviews, he has spoken about the constant second-guessing that comes with losing a child. "There's not a day I don't go by without thinking about him," Rick said of Adam. The burden of guilt, the weight of wondering what he could have done differently, the awareness that no amount of money or business success can protect you from the losses that life inflicts. These are the real tragedies behind the Pawn Stars brand. Corey's withdrawal from the show and his relocation to Mexico can be understood as an attempt to escape the shadow of his father and the weight of a family business that had consumed his entire life. But instead of escape, he found himself facing a near-death experience that forced him to confront his deepest fears. Fears about addiction inherited from watching his brother, fears about financial insecurity despite years of television success, fears about his relationship with his father. The Pawn Stars name still follows Corey everywhere, but he says his real life now looks very different. And it all starts with a new podcast and a new mindset. He co-created the podcast with former Pawn Stars producer Jairus Cobb, who now co-hosts with him. Corey gives Cobb credit for helping shape the original show into a hit, even calling him a key behind-the-scenes reason it became one of the highest-rated programs on TV. Now, the two are working together again, recording in Corey's guest house in Tulum, where he has been living and rebuilding his life. The podcast itself launched in July, and, in Corey's words, it is not filtered or polished. It is raw, adult in tone, and very much reflects how he talks off-camera. He warns that it is not for everyone, but that is exactly the point. One of the biggest changes in Corey's life is how completely he has stepped away from Pawn Stars. He says he has not had a direct conversation with History Channel executives in about 10 years and insists he no longer works at the pawn shop in Las Vegas. Even though he acknowledges it will always be part of his story, he says that chapter is closed professionally. He is also aware of the new spin-off content coming from his family, including his father Rick Harrison and Chumlee's podcast. Corey jokes that his own show will do better, but quickly softens it, saying he supports them and wants them to succeed. Despite any rivalry fans might imagine, he insists there is no real bitterness. In fact, he says the bigger change was personal. Working with his father meant wearing too many roles at once: son, employee, business partner, and co-star. That mix created pressure and confusion over time. Now, he says, things are simpler. Rick is just his dad again, not his boss. Corey also reflects on memories from the old show, including chaotic moments like lost jewelry and tense pawn counter incidents that became part of Pawn Stars' history. But even with all the drama, he says he holds no grudges toward anyone from that world. Should Corey Harrison have left Pawn Stars sooner, or was the tragedy of his brother's death something no amount of career planning could have prevented? What does his story reveal about the hidden costs of reality television fame and family-run businesses? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.